What do you say, everybody? I'm Roll Tide. Welcome to the show. Got a lot to talk about today. Is Alabama going to cancel their series with Ohio State? How about the salary cap? Are teams really following the $20 million cap for paying players? And is the Charles Bediako situation over? We'll talk that and more right here on the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. Brought to you by Pearl River Resort. So much so that, well, this guy's going to tell you about it.
So, Jake, let's break down some game tape.
Hold on, fellas. Steve.
Hey, Jake. You ready to rock?
Let's roll, brother.
Guess we're calling plays at Pearl River Resort. Wow, Jake's first throw scores. And Steve's got the crowd pumped. Man, they're absolutely rolling.
'Cause I don't have to be me till Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I ain't gonna face reality.
I tell you, Jake's still got game. While Steve keeps rocking aces. Boom, Jake seals it with a pick.
Come call your own plays
At Pearl River Resort. Let's roll.
I don't have to be me till Monday.
All right, there he is, Chris Lowe from On 3. I'm Mick Gillespie. Again, brought to you by Silver Star, Golden Moon Casino, and it's always good to talk to you, Chris. Let me get into this right away. Bama and Ohio State are set to play a home-and-home after Bama plays Florida State this year, right? So the next one would be a home-and-home against Ohio State. But because of the situation right now where, it feels like if you lose this game, it's counted twice against you. Alabama may opt out, and I think that's bad for the sport.
Well, we'll start here, Mick. The way it reads right now, even with the SEC going to 9 league games, there is a stipulation, not a stipulation, but the requirement is you also have to play a Power 4 non-conference opponent or Notre Dame. So in essence, with the 9 league games, you're playing 10 what I would call legit game. Now, if Alabama and Ohio State were not to play, if Alabama were to pull out or vice versa, then Bama would have to be in adherence with that requirement, would have to pick up somebody else to play in Power 4. The weird thing with the SEC is, some of the schools have built-in Power 4 rivals that they play every year. Florida State and Florida, Clemson and South Carolina, Kentucky and Louisville. Alabama doesn't have that. Auburn doesn't have that. Tennessee doesn't have that. So those schools are going to have to go out and find somebody. Now, the two of us have talked off air enough, and my feeling on this is what you just said. Man, I hope for the sport's sake that this new landscape of college football, with the playoff being the end all and the moving goalposts that exist and how teams are selected for the playoff, I get all that. But, man, I hope the collateral damage is not that we lose Alabama and Ohio State playing, Michigan and Oklahoma, those type of rivalries. Texas and Ohio State played this year. Tennessee had several series with Miami back in the early 2000s. I don't like the neutral site games. I understand why they do it. I understand the monetary part of it. If you're Alabama or Tennessee or Georgia or Auburn and you're in the Southeast footprint, it makes sense you would want to play in Atlanta. That's a recruiting tool. All the players in that area, your fans can drive there pretty easily, and then you're getting paid a ton of money by the people that put on that event. But, man, to me, the fabric of college football is Ohio State playing at Alabama and Alabama going back to Ohio State the next year. It's Notre Dame and Georgia had a great home-and-home series a few years ago. It's the Georgia fans going up to South Bend one year and then Notre Dame coming back to Georgia the next year. Those games, I just don't think we can lose them. I think the more of those type games we lose the soul of the sport. And listen, everybody wants to make the playoff. And as well as I do, if you don't make the playoff now, it's a bad season.
Yeah.
Nobody comes away from college football anymore. Now I say nobody, but certainly the upper tier teams in the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and say, well, we had a pretty good year, but we didn't make the playoff. If you miss the playoff, certainly if you're Alabama, if you're Georgia, if you're Ohio State, you're Michigan, the LSU's the world, and you don't make the playoff, it's a bad year. So there's pressure to get there. There's pressure to do damage. And then you see a school like Ole Miss this year who has not been one of your traditional historical blue bloods, and they get to the semifinals. All that does is put pressure on every other coach in the league. Well, gosh, if Ole Miss can do that, why can we not do it?
Right. Well, yeah. And I mean, but it also shows you too that the field's wide open right now for teams to have success. You know, Ole Miss kind of being surprisingly the team that went the furthest in the SEC. You know, obviously the situation where their coach Lane Kiffin went to LSU and then they still made a run anyway. And then looking back at everything, I mean, they lost a tight game to Miami, and then Miami lost a tight game to Indiana. You know, I mean, they were that close to winning a national championship, but they didn't expand the playoff like I thought they should have. I think you and I have talked about this before. If college football wants to have these matchups, Chris, they have to expand the field, the playoff field, so that you're not going to get kicked out because you lose a game. Texas feels like they lost to Ohio State. That kept them out of the playoff last year, right? They lost a close game to start the season at Ohio State. They didn't make it because of that. If you had a 32-team field, they would have been in just fine.
Well, they would have been in a 16-team field. And I think, I don't know, I mean, I haven't sat down and had, you know, a heart-to-heart talk with Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, but I think Sankey's feel was that it would expand to 16. And I think that's not the only reason, but one of the reasons that the SEC agreed to go to 9 league games. That, all right, we're going to go to 9 league games, but we're going to go to 16 teams in the playoff, which is going to give us more of a chance to get more teams there. Now the SEC, to be fair, did have more teams this year in the playoff than any other league. They had, what, 5? Is that right? More teams in. And I think if you go to 16 with a 9-league conference schedule starting next season, you're right, Mick, you're going to have a better chance to get it. And I think if you want, let's look at all this, because everybody wants to sort of pick and choose from all the different sides, from the SEC side, the Big Ten side. It is a fact that the last 3 national champions are Big Ten teams, all 3 really good football teams. I don't think anybody could stand up right now and say, well, Indiana wasn't the best team in the country. When you look at who they beat in the playoff, they went to Oregon during the regular season and won. They beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. They were the best team in college football.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the other fact. All 3 of the last national champions, Big Ten teams, didn't play anybody in the non-conference part of their schedule. I don't think any of them played a Power 4 school. Now, they have been playing 9 league games, whereas the SEC has only been playing 8, and we could sit here all day and argue that the SEC is deeper, the grind is harder in the SEC than it is in the Big Ten. Again, a lot of that depends on where you sit. I happen to believe that it is. I think that the team that's 8th or 9th in the SEC is a tougher out than the team in the Big Ten that's 8th or 9th. And I think that's played out the last few years. We've discussed that, you know, on our show here a bunch this year. Is the SEC really the last couple of years, Mick, hasn't been as top heavy as it was when Bama was dominating in Georgia. And you see that with some of the results. So I think if you look at it from all the different sides, I understand the arguments. The 2 things, though, that I would say definitively, I agree with you. I think the sport needs to expand. I'm okay with 16. I don't know that we need to go to 24. I'd like to see us assess what 16 is like for a couple of years, and then maybe we got a better idea. And the second thing I would say is, man, I just don't want to lose the intersectional games that have made the sport so great. The games that I grew up watching. I don't care when they're played. If they're played in September, you know, if it's USA Notre Dame is another one. You know, I can't imagine. I just think about how long did Texas and Texas A&M not play until Texas joined the SEC. You've got Oklahoma and Oklahoma State don't play anymore. Those are games that, to me, are what college football was built on. And there's got to be a way, whether it's expanding to 16, past 16, whatever, that schools aren't afraid to play those games or try to find ways not to play them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I just think that at this point, expanding the playoff to include all the bowl games would save the bowls and also would make these matchups in the regular season happen. I know it's diluted the regular season, which I feel like was what made college football different than the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I mean, we're going to look at Indiana. I mean, look, they were the best team in the country. They won the national championship, but they also played 3 really weak out of conference teams to start the season.
Right.
Really weak. I mean, like give me a break, right? Alabama's playing Florida State and Wisconsin, and they're playing Sisters of the Poor, basket weaving, and we barely have a football team program, It's like not very exciting, but it was smart because they got their roster together. They put their team together in a way where they had 3 games on top of practice to be ready, and they ran the table. I'm with you, man. I hope that this isn't the beginning of the end of what it looked like was going to be a really exciting time in college football, where we had a lot of these teams playing, really fun non-conference games.
Yeah, and the whole Big Ten SEC, let's be honest, those are the 2 leagues that have the power. I mean, whatever they want, they're going to get. And right now, they're at a stalemate, quite frankly, Mick. The Big Ten says, well, no, we're not going to – we're going to expand. We're going to go to 24. And the SEC says, well, no, if that's the case, we'll just stay at 12. The SEC clearly was more comfortable staying at 12 than they were going to 24. And the Big Ten did not want to go to 16. And I get it. If you're the Big Ten, if you go to 16 this year, who gets in? Who are those other spots going to? Vandy probably gets in. Texas almost certainly would have gotten in.
Right.
I don't know that the Big Ten would have gotten another team in. And so the SEC really wins in that scenario this year anyway. Now, it changes from year to year. I still think the SEC, when you get on those stages, though, you got to play well. And Ohio State 2 years ago, boat raced Tennessee. This year, Indiana boat raced Alabama when they played in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M did not play well in the playoff. Ole Miss was sort of the one that carried the banner. And the funny thing is all these teams that are getting the bye, because football is a sport where how healthy you are, do you have an edge rusher, who maybe he's got a little bit of a knee or hamstring, an extra week can help him get ready. But sometimes, Mick, I think it works against you if you're off too long in football. And you look at all these teams that got byes over the last few years, they're not winning.
No.
Georgia now 2 years in a row has received a bye, and they've lost their first game. So is that an advantage? I don't know. It hasn't been an advantage the last couple of years,
right?
Certainly for some of the SEC teams, and I do believe maybe more so than just having to win 1 fewer game, which matters. It's harder to win, obviously, 4. Ole Miss would have been, I guess, a test case. They would have had to win 4 games to win the national championship this year because they played Tulane in that first game, and then they played Georgia, and then they lost to Miami. But I think the bigger issue there is if you don't play a football game for a month, I mean, football is such a rhythm. If you're playing well, and I understand there's that sort of catch-22. Yeah, you want to be rested, you want to be healthy. But how many times do you play in any sport, for that matter? Do you go that long without playing a game, and then you're playing the most important game of the year after being off for 24, 25 days?
Yeah, I hear you. And then the other question is, what are we going to do with these championship games? Because
I think they're gone. I think we're moving very quickly, one way or the other. And listen, the SEC championship game has been awesome for the league. It's been how many great games and moments has it given us over the years? I mean, some of the matchups, those Florida-Alabama matchups when Tebow was there, the Georgia-Alabama matchups. There've been a lot, and going all the way back to the first one.
Yeah,
there in Birmingham. It's been a big part of the foundation of what the SEC, certainly over the last 3+ decades, has been. But I think when you look at the calendar, Mick, and if we are going to indeed expand, Now this year will be a little bit different coming up because I'm pretty sure this is a 1-bye season and not a 2-bye season. But if we're going to expand, I think you got to start playing the games a little earlier. You got to play them in week 0. And there's no reason that teams can't be ready. The old days, I say the old days, I sound like that get off my lawn type of guy, but
yeah, right.
Kids didn't show up until August to get ready. They're on campus all year long now. The large majority of your roster is there from January on. They go, even the freshmen, kids now that you signed the portal, you're going through spring practice. They're there all summer working out with the strength and conditioning staff. And then you start back in August. So I was talking to Kirby Smart about this. I don't think it's unrealistic to think that you could play earlier.
Right.
It's going to be hot. I get that in August. But you could play earlier than you do. You have every year is a 1-bye season, and you start the playoff earlier. Next year, I think the championship game, Mick, is the 25th of January.
Really?
25th of January.
So pushing it back.
You're pumping up against close to when the Super Bowl's played a week and a half before.
Right.
That's just too long a season. And 17 games. Don't you love remember the old catchphrase in college athletics was student athlete welfare? Remember that?
Yeah.
Chancellors and presidents. When's the last time you heard that uttered?
No, and that kind of leads me to the next thing I want to talk about. Before I go there, a couple things I want to tell you guys. First off, newlifeart.com. You see the beautiful Daniel Moore prints behind me in the studio here, commemorating some of Alabama's amazing football feats. These are national championships. That's the Clemson one with our friend Jay Coker on it. And then that is when Alabama beat LSU down in New Orleans. He's got a lot of great moments, including buzzer beater with Mark Sears beating Auburn last year. And you got, I think Ryan Williams is going to set to have a great year. He made an incredible catch to beat Georgia a couple of seasons ago. Bama Tailgate at checkout, newlifeart.com, 20% off. Take advantage of that. And the other thing I want to tell you guys is this, I love sharing right here, anything Grateful Dead I love. And my man, J.K. Terrell made this for me at Brown Shed Glass Studio. Phone number's on the screen. He can make anything. And this thing is so sturdy. Put it on the window. It looks amazing. I love it. But he does Alabama logos. He does, moon winks, like a bunch of different really cool stuff. Just go check his site out. And you just hit the Brown Shed Studio. And like I said, you can Google J.K. Terrell. He'll take care of you, man. He's a great guy. All right. Next topic for you, Chris, is do teams honor the $20 million salary cap? And I say that in conjunction with AL.com putting out the financials of the Alabama athletic department. And we found out that, no surprise, if anybody's watched me for a long time, I get on this kick every once in a while where I say that women's basketball and baseball, and I love these sports. This isn't an indictment of the sport or the players, but from a business standpoint, Chris, when I put this on the screen, it makes very little sense business-wise to have a business that you lose almost $5 million, like both of those did. Football made $64 million, and then you got all these other sports losing money. So before we get to that, and I just wanted to put that up there for you to think about, your thoughts on our teams sticking by the salary cap, and is Alabama going to be able to compete with Texas and Ohio State? Because I feel like Alabama's fallen behind when it comes to NIL.
Teams are finding a way to do it. I mean, Indiana, who would have believed 3 years ago when you started talking about the big business that college football is and the money that teams are spending on quarterbacks and edge rushers and left tackles, that Indiana could find a way to do it. So, I mean, obviously there's a way to do it. And did they hit it just right this year? I guess we're going to find out if they can sustain it. But no, to answer your question, no, everyone's not sticking to the. I mean, you got to understand. There's two, as you know, there are two layers to paying players now. There's the rev share, which is at $20.5 million. It's going to go up next year. I think I saw it 21 and some change, and 15. Most schools like the Alabamas, Ohio States of the world will spend 15 of that on football. And then the other layer is NIL, aka pay for play. Well, that's what it is. And there's supposed to be a clearinghouse that vets these deals. And I'm not saying there's not one, but if you really want to get around anything, you can do it. I mean, how do you pay? If not, how do you pay a quarterback $6.5 million or $5 million? And you look at look at what LSU did this year, their portal haul. Texas, I mean, Cam Coleman, who goes from Auburn to Texas, is making, several $1 million. And there's no way you can build that type of roster without paying 15, 20 million plus in NIL over and above the rev share. Everybody's cap is quote unquote the same in rev share. Now, I think schools maybe divvy that up a little bit differently, but I think the thing that's in the grayest of gray areas, Mick, is the NIL part, where collectives, donor-based collectives, can put together deals for players to pay them, which is supposed to be based on their name, image, and likeness. The phrase that they use is as long as it's fair market value. Well, you tell me, what is your definition of fair market value? And I think that's where if you're going to really make it even for everybody, and I'm not saying it should or shouldn't be, that's where you got to figure out a way to really enforce that. I don't know if there is any way, which is why it seems every week, every month, you're hearing another AD, another administrator come out and say, well, maybe we should go to some sort of a collective bargaining model, where then it is, there's a negotiated piece of the pie that the players get. They have representation, and everybody plays with that cap. There's contracts that can be enforced. You don't have guys moving around 4 times. They've got to honor the contract. Will that fix everything? No, I don't think it will, but maybe that's a better solution, to what we got now. Now, some of the newer contracts, you're starting to see schools enforce those. If a kid leaves, well, you owe us $500,000.
Yeah.
As part of what your deal was. And we've seen some of that already.
Are they getting the money?
I think the kid who just went from he just left Duke to go to Miami, the quarterback, is going to have to pay back some of that money, some of that cash that he was the deal. But I don't know if there's any easy fix to that. But I don't think people are following that to a T of what they can and can't pay outside the realm of rev share. And nor did I ever think, maybe I'm a skeptic. And I go all the way back when we went down the NIL road. You remember when we first went down this road several years ago, and the committee, the people that looked at all this from different parts of academia and in the college sports world said, well, okay, it's time to start paying players, which it was time. You're making millions upon millions of dollars, and you're going to pay a kid cost of attendance or whatever. But I love this. You can find it. Go Google it. I sound like Signetti now. Google me. But you can find these articles where those people had I'll say it, stupidity to say, now, this is not going to be a part of the recruiting process. Remember that? This will not be something that's part of an enticement to get kids to come to our school. Give me a break. Did anybody ever really believe that? That's exactly what it was going to become. And that's all it's become now. Because when a kid comes on campus, you can't get kids on campus anymore unless you promise them this amount of money. Some kids, agents, want so much money just to come to campus for a visit. And that's where we are. And I don't know. You tell me, man, you're a smarter dude than I am. How do you put that toothpaste back in the tube when you get to this point? Unless you just completely tear it up, and there's a break, say in football, and you've heard this is something else you're starting to hear more and more of. Coaches believe it, that it's coming. Now, they don't maybe say it as much publicly as they do privately, that there is a break coming in college football away from the NCAA. And I don't know the number of teams. Is it 38? Is it 52? Whoever can afford it, and you have your own commissioner, You have your own governance. You have your own playoff. You set that playoff, your own revenue sharing model for the players, and you go play. Now, what's that do for the rest of the sports? I don't know. But the probably the worst secret in college football is that the NCAA does not control the postseason. It doesn't control the playoff. Now, obviously, it does the baseball tournament and the basketball tournament. But the postseason of football is not run by the NCAA. So do we get to a point to where there's just a break away from the NCAA in football and teams sort of go take their ball and set up the way they want to?
Yeah. I mean, to me, Chris, it comes down to this right here. I put this on the screen and I look at Alabama and I feel like Alabama has fallen behind or it's in the pack right now when it comes to money. Now, I say that because revenue speaking, Alabama is one of the top revenue producing teams in the country. When you profit $64 million, to me, I mean, that's a lot of money. And when you're talking about revenues of $147 million, paying $20 or $30 or $40 million for players that actually go out and do the work financially just makes sense. This is not amateur athletics anymore, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not the one that made it that way, but that's just the way that it is. It's turned into that. Jimbo Fisher got all upset when Coach Saban kind of said something about it at the very beginning, and now look at it. And Texas A&M and Ohio State and Texas Tech, these schools have more money than everybody. They're buying rosters that and Alabama's losing players, Quay Russo and James Smith to Ohio State. Isaiah Horton, their best receiver that would have came back, goes to Texas A&M. It's a dollars and cents game now. And to me, if I'm Greg Byrne, I have to figure out a way to make sure that I have enough money to supply Alabama with players that separate them from the rest of the pack, or they're going to be in the middle of the pack. And it comes down to talent in any sport that's out there. And I know we're supposedly have rules in place, but we don't. Just like you just said, nobody's following these rules. Look at Dabo, what he said about Pete Golding, and absolutely nothing's going to happen except that the player goes from Clemson to Ole Miss.
Yeah, the moral of that story is when you're in class, shut your phone off, right? So coaches can't text you at other schools. You know what Dabo's doing. Listen, Dabo, you can run the gamut of whether people can't stand him or love him. He doesn't care. But good and well what he's doing is he's throwing a big old high-hanging curveball out there for the NCAA to say, all right, here it is. I'm going to give you names. I'm going to give you dates. I'm going to give you specific instances. Let's see what you do with it. And that's exactly what he's doing. And love him or hate him, at least he's not sort of throwing out these vague references. Well, people are cheating. They're cheating. Everybody's tampering. Okay, well, who's doing it? How are they doing it? When are they doing it? To whom are they doing it? And Mickey basically laid it all out there. And it's, okay, here you go, NCAA. Let's see, to your point, can you do something about it? Will you do something about it? Do you do something about it? And then it's defeated in court.
Right.
Because the weaponization now, listen, the state courts, and we've seen it, in Alabama, we've seen it in Tennessee, we're seeing it in Mississippi right now. If someone doesn't like a ruling, whatever it is, eligibility or whatever else, they're going to, let's get this moved to state court. Let's go sue them. And I know that's frustrating. I was talking to Greg Sankey last year about this at the tournament. And I think we all know where he stands on some of the eligibility issues. He came out and said what he said in the affidavit. But I asked him, there was a case with a baseball player last year at Tennessee who'd played in North Carolina and gone to a JUCO or somewhere. And he was trying to get eligible at Tennessee. Well, he did not win. He got defeated in court. And I asked Sankey, I said, what's the difference? Tell me how the Pavia ruling does not apply in this case. And he said, because they got it wrong with Pavia. So even going back to Pavia getting it last year, he did not believe that was right or the right ruling in his mind, whether you agree or don't agree with him. I think every school has wealthy donors. Some, Texas money is different than Tennessee money or Alabama
Right.
money or Georgia money. And if you've got 12 or 10 or 6 billionaires
Right.
who want to pony up, that's it's not apples to apples, as you point. It's not oranges to oranges. And
No.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's sort of that's the path we've gone down now in college athletics. And I know everybody says, well, when is there going to be some uniformity, or when is there going to be some guardrails? Man, I don't know. I mean, I really don't. And you know the guy at Texas Tech, he's Phil Knight at Oregon. I mean, go look at what Oregon's spending.
Right.
Miami, Texas Tech. I mean, and yet again, I go back, to be fair, Indiana found a way to do it, and I bet you their revenues aren't what Alabama's is. Now, I think they also spent more, and this is probably the misconception. Indiana spent some pretty good cash on this roster, and they didn't spend what Ohio State did or Miami.
Mm-hmm.
They're not way up there at the top, but they spent a lot more than I think people realize. But they also spent pretty wisely.
Yeah, right. Well, they also
went
scouted better than everybody else.
Bingo. Their evaluations over the last 2 years, and him being able to bring 13 kids with him from JMU that he knew what their work ethic was like. He knew what they were going to be in the locker room. I mean, that paid a lot of dividends for them. But there's a lot of kids on that team, Nick. If you go follow and I did a piece for On3 about this, I think the week of the championship game, they had a lot of kids start for them this year who were 2-star, no-star kids that they developed, or kids that transferred in. The kid who blew his knee out, I love to use him as an example. Stephen Daly,
Mm-hmm.
He did not play, which again, to me, speaks to just how good this team was.
I know.
He was their top pressure guy. He was their top edge guy. He had 19 and a half tackles for loss, like 12 sacks. He blew his knee out, unfortunately for him, celebrating in the Big Ten championship game after they won. He didn't play at all in the playoff. I mean, take Reuben Bain off Miami's team. Take anybody's top edge rusher, and they didn't miss a beat. Well, he played at Kent State. They went and got him. They were 0-12 his last year at Kent State and brought him to Indiana. And he was a productive player at Kent State. But he wasn't on like all conference teams and that kind of thing. They bring him to Indiana, and he has this monster year and is a huge part of it. So to me, that's the answer. If you want to look inside of a personnel department or inside of a football program, that's going to be the model. Can you be as good in your personnel department at finding guys that fit, finding guys that are maybe sort of been hidden, whether it's at a mid-major. I guess there are mid-majors in football. I know they don't like to be called that. They can come on and play a lot better. Maybe guys who are under-recruited. But you still are going to have to go out and be competitive. And when it comes to quarterbacks, I think quarterbacks and pass rushers are probably at a different level. You're going to have to pay to get the best of those guys.
Yeah. Yep, man. Great points. Hey, don't forget about AveD. That's Mick Nation. Hit the QR code right there. We do games and prizes. It's all free. Gave away cash, including really had some fun during the college football playoff. But we appreciate those guys. And Mick Nation, that's our Web3 home. All right, so you kind of led this right into this. Is Charles Bediako done for good? I mean, is this it? Or could Alabama appeal the injunction thing?
It doesn't sound like his legal team's given up. And, he's sort of on the clock now as the basketball season starts to wind down. Other cases that are brought forward, how long is it going to take? Sometimes those things get hung up. I saw where, I think I read this today, Mick, where the Ole Miss coach wrote him a letter and told him, hey, for you as a kid, these are still kids. I know he's older. But I think we oftentimes forget in situations like this, these kids still are 22, 23, 24. And no matter what you think of what Oates did or didn't do, or whether Alabama should have sanctioned this, there's still people involved. And the system is what it is, okay? There is a loophole in the system. Blame the NCAA for a lot of these hardship waivers that have been granted. I think they, quite frankly, Dan Wetzel wrote a pretty good article about this at ESPN. They've probably given too many hardship cases or waivers to kids over the last few years. And it's like anything else, when there doesn't seem to be a lot of consistency in who gets them and who doesn't, that's what drives coaches crazy. It drives administrators crazy. In Bediako's case, and I understand where they just said, hey, a lot of kids from Europe who've been paid, played pro, come over and play in college, and they have. I think the difference is, and just about every coach I've talked to agrees with this, that they want a cut and dried eligibility window. Make it 5 years. And if you want to play 5 years, play 5 years.
Right.
You know, if you blow your knee out in your second year and you can't play, that's tough, but you still got 3 more years to play. Now, the better players aren't going to play 5 years. They're going to leave and go. We know that. But, you know, a case like Bediako, I know his is out, I guess would be outside that. But going into the draft voluntarily and then signing a pro contract, I think that's where most coaches want to draw the line. No, I don't think they're going to give up. And it sounds like Nate Oates certainly is not going to give up. I just think it's unfair, whether you agree with what Alabama did or didn't do, to blame the kid. And I know he faced a lot of grief on the road from opposing fans. You knew that was coming. Everybody knew that.
Yeah.
But if the system is what it is, and you've got people going to court and challenging some of these rulings, then people are always going to try to do that. Again, I call it weaponizing the court system. And I can't imagine 10 years ago thinking, Mick, we'd ever be in this type of situation, but there's a lot of things that happened. And, you know, people talk about kids making money. Let's not forget, man, the salaries, and you're talking about the income that Bama brings in. And listen, all the SEC schools, did you see what each school make with the revenue sharing? I think they announced it this week in the SEC, a staggering amount. I think the Big Ten's actually will be a little bit more when they announce it.
Really?
But when you're paying coaches 11, 12, 13, $14 million, some cases coaches who've never won a championship.
$72 million.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Lane Kiffin made a massive difference.
Sorry, Chris, is that all over football?
Well, if football I mean, you're talking about
or is that some of that women's basketball?
No, that's basically what the SEC, well, I know you're being facetious, but it's what they bring in, and they're divvying it up among the schools.
Right.
But listen, no sports make money. Kentucky, I'm sure, makes money on basketball. I'd say some of the basketball teams, men's basketball teams. I'd like to see what UConn makes in women's. Mick, I'd like to see UConn women's hoops numbers. I don't know that they make money. If any women's hoops team in the country does, they probably would be the one that does. But, you know, Tennessee's women's program has it. And they're one of the more traditional powers out there. It's just none of the sports, though. Baseball, I mean, you know how good baseball is in the SEC. Mm-hmm. Hell, it might be better. Baseball in the SEC might be better than football.
Yeah.
And you go through the schools, they're not making money in baseball. So
do you think that's a good question, because Bama's hemorrhaging money. I love Bama baseball. It goes back to my days broadcasting it on college radio, getting to know Jim Wells, who used to call me Dizzy, taught me a lot about the game. I love Alabama baseball. Love it. But it's not making any money. I mean, when you lose $4 million, but I look at like Mississippi State and LSU and Ole Miss, and I'm just curious. I'll try to Google it here, but I mean, they Tennessee. I mean, they pack the place out every game.
Mm-hmm. And just spent a lot of money to upgrade the stadium. Tennessee did millions of dollars. I guess it's probably unfair to look at it purely. I mean, it is a business, but purely, Title IX is always going to be there. Okay, that's not going away. And football is free, ever. It's footed the bill.
When do they sue over Title IX, though? I mean, when do you look at it and go, look, when this was created, the revenue model was for amateur athletics. It's not amateur athletics anymore. No,
and hasn't
been.
And
you're in a competitive world, and you're losing $5 million. And that goes for baseball too. But Title IX, I mean, teams have been hiding behind that, because it's the law, but the whole scope of this is different now. And if Alabama starts losing games, Chris, let me tell you something. It affects not just the field, it affects our economy. You know, our economy in the state is affected by football. Believe that. That's the truth.
Yeah. And I've had ADs say privately to me, you know, we haven't really seen it to a very small degree, that they think what's coming is some of these sports are going to get cut and go to club sports, some of the Olympic sports, and probably, quite frankly, on the men's side, men's tennis, men's track and field, men's soccer, that may be you talk about collateral damage that may come. We'll see if we get to that point or not. There's been a lot of predictions that haven't come true yet about where we are in college sports. I still don't think, just like the playoff, I still don't know that we have enough of a body of work, sort of where we are, to know what's what or what's coming or what's not coming. I'll say this, though, for schools, you know, people think there's an unlimited supply of money at the Alabamas or the Clemsons or the Floridas of the world, schools that have had a lot of success over the last few. Tennessee hasn't had success that those schools have in football. But the reality is some of those schools don't have the billionaires, the number of billionaires, you know, that are, you know, ponying up the kind of cash that you see, you know, at the Oregons or the Miamis or the Ohio States or the USCs, schools that have spent. Texas Tech is obviously the new player to the game that everybody brings up. Texas A&M, Texas. I know I said it earlier, but Texas money is different than everybody else's money, and that's never going to change. So what the question then becomes, what will or what can change in college sports? I do caution people who say, well, we can't compete anymore because, you know, we don't have the money that Miami or Texas Tech does. Well, I keep pointing to Indiana, what Indiana did. And this, Indiana was pretty good last year. This is what wasn't the first year that they were pretty good. Now, to me, it's going to be fascinating, Mick, to see, can they sustain this level of play?
Yeah.
Can they continue to evaluate and build rosters? I mean, you look at what LSU's done already. You know, they haven't played a game under Lane Kiffin, but man, they spent a ton of cash on that roster in 26 at a lot of key spots, transfers. Lane's gone out and signed a bunch of really highly coveted players, high school players. I think that's the other one. You start asking me, what are you looking for in the next 2 or 3 years? I think number one is, what kind of sustainability does Indiana? And I'm not doubting Kurt Signetti at all. I'm not saying they can't, but I still think a lot of us are going to be watching who love the sport to see if they can. Number two, what does Lane do at LSU? Because it's not like they were, they may not have been spending some of these schools, but they still spent a ton of money on this roster this last year. And they ended up firing their coach, Brian Kelly. And you know as well as I know, if Lane goes in there for the first year or two and they're not in the playoff, you know, and they're not a team that's, you know, a top 10 type of team after 2 years, what's going to happen in Baton Rouge?
Yeah.
And I think that's the second thing. The third thing is there anybody else in college football other than the two we just mentioned, Texas Tech and Indiana? Can anybody else jump up there from the not so usual, not, you know, outside the usual suspects,
right, and
make a run like we've seen with those two? Because then, to me, you know, I'll just throw a team out there. Do we see an Oklahoma State or someone like that? Can they do what Texas Tech and Indiana have done in a pretty short period of time? Because if that happens, then we really are in a brand new ball game, and it's all bets are off. You know, the schools that have dominated and been the blue bloods, I don't know if there will be blue bloods anymore.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I mean, it's tougher to compete, but if you're the team spending the most money, and I know Coach Saban's like, well, you got to get it right. Look, they're paying a lot of people that are smart at Ohio State and Texas A&M and Texas Tech and Oregon to get it right, and they're going to get it right. And
I still
Bama
think you got to
if they're
recruit,
going to
man.
compete, they need to get there.
Yeah, I still think you got to recruit. I don't think you can do it every year in the portal. I think that's a big piece of it. Much like the NFL, you better be good and pretty savvy in the free agency market in the NFL. But boy, if you screw up the draft 2 or 3 years in a row,
Yeah,
it's going to show up. And I still think it's that way in college football. It was a different time when Nick was winning all those championships, Mick. But in his 6 titles at Alabama, if you go 4 years prior to every class, like 4 years of classes leading up to that national championship season. So in 6 titles, that's what, 24 classes? 17 of those 24 were ranked number 1 in the country.
Yeah.
You still got to recruit at a high level out of high schools. Do you take as many? No, I don't think you do. Do you take as many 3-stars and think, all right, this kid can develop? Maybe not. And I think that hurts those kids, those 3-star prospects. The Aiden Fishers of the world. Well, Aiden Fisher was a heck of a college football player for Indiana. I don't know how many years he'll play in the pros. Maybe 1, maybe 11. I have no idea. But you think back to him, if he was coming out now as a 3-star kid in high school, I don't know how many opportunities he would get because of where we are in the sport. And even when Nick was signing all those monster classes, they still, and I think what set them apart was the level of competition they created on the practice field.
Yeah, right.
And those kids, even if they didn't play as freshmen or they played situationally as sophomores, by the time they got to be juniors, they were NFL type players. And that was the secret. People always say, what was the secret sauce? That was the secret sauce.
Right.
Because he could develop them and create competition to where on the practice field, man, they were seeing pros every day. And it's harder to do that now. Georgia did the same thing when Kirby got there. They did the very same thing. It's much, much more difficult to do that now, Mick.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, he won at every level. And you're watching Coach DeBoer trying to figure it out. And it's not like Coach DeBoer's been a failure. And you won 11 games. You got to the college football playoff, went into the SEC championship game at number 1, had some bad losses. And I think that people aren't necessarily upset that you lose some games, but the nature in which some of those games went the other way. But look,
and they won a game. They did win a game in the playoff too. I think we probably all forget that. But it's getting pounded the way they did by the eventual national champion. Is that those last tastes, man, those last impressions with a proud fan base like Alabama. And Alabama's, Ohio State's the same way. Go talk to the folks up in Columbus, Ohio right now. Ask them what they think of this past season. Yeah. And they're coming off a national title. And that's just the way it is. And I hate to keep going back to Saban, but he called this. He said when we went down the playoff road, everything was going to be based on the playoff. What you did in the playoff. Did you get there, number 1? Number 2, what kind of run did you make in the playoff? And when you got to the playoff, how did you compete? And now if you have a bad loss, like Alabama, they win a game in the playoff and then they get beat badly. Well, if you ask, I don't know, 40 Alabama fans right now, what do you think of the season in 25? They'd say, it was a bad season.
Right.
Well, if you step 1,000 feet away and look at it, I wouldn't call it a bad season. Was it what everybody wanted, including Kalen DeBoer? No. But to me, if you get to the SEC championship game and you get to the playoff and you win a playoff game, that's not the goal and never will be the goal in Alabama. But I don't think it's a bad season either.
No, I agree. Trying to figure it out on the offensive line, trying to figure it out in the portal, trying to keep this program together. And you wonder how much his family likes Tuscaloosa. You hear conflicting reports on that, but I like the guy, and I hope that he has success because you can see the wheels turning. He's a smart guy, and hopefully he gets it figured out. Well, Chris, always great to see you. What are you working on right now at On 3?
Well, believe it or not, man, I'm not too far away from hitting the road on my tours. I always do the spring practice tour, and certainly plan to be through Alabama, but I'm going to try to hit a Midwest tour and go see Kirk Cignetti. Hopefully go see Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, some of those schools, Ohio State. I'll do Bama, Auburn, Ole Miss. May go out west this year. May go try to catch up with Lincoln Riley. This is a big year for SC. They're recruiting well, but there's another team that hasn't made the playoff. And I'd say he's probably getting to that point, certainly the fans. his AD, Jen Cohen. I mean, that this will be, to me, I'm not saying they're going to fire him. They still would owe him like $70 million or something like that, $60 million. But in this day and age, is that really a lot of money, Mick? You tell me. But I do think this is a year, I won't say make or break year, but I do think this is a year where the Trojans really need to get to the playoff, and he needs to get to the playoff there, because they did that at Oklahoma. They have not been able to break through at SC. And that's one of those places there's really no reason you shouldn't be able to.
Right. Well, Chris, always good seeing you guys. Make sure that you comment in the comment section. We're brought to you by Pearl River Resort, Philadelphia, Mississippi. I talk about them all the time. You guys know you've been there before. You love it. If you haven't, go check it out. Everything you need, table games and slots, Vegas style. You got the Timeout Sports Lounge, which is a Vegas style sports book it's just like being in Vegas. Actually, it's nicer than a lot of the casino sports books out in Vegas, because you can get a table, 20 big screen TVs, full-size bar. You got a window if you need somebody to help you there, kiosks, individual kiosks, all that stuff. Dancing Rabbit Golf Course, which is the Augusta you can play. They got concerts. They do it all at Pearl River Resort. You're going to hour and a half, maybe close to 2 hours, depending on where you're coming from. In Tuscaloosa, 2 and change from Birmingham. And I know you're going to enjoy it. Chris, thank you. Roll Tide, everybody, and we will talk to you soon.
So, Jake, let's break down some game tape.
Hold on, fellas. Steve,
Hey, Jake, you ready to rock?
let's roll, brother.
Guess we're calling plays at Pearl River Resort. Wow, Jake's first throw scores. And Steve's got the crowd pumped. Man, they're absolutely rolling.
'Cause I don't have to be me till Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I ain't gonna face reality.
I tell you, Jake's still got game. While Steve keeps rocking aces. Boom, Jake seals it with a pick.
Come call your own plays.
At Pearl River Resort, let's roll.
I don't have to be me till Monday.
In some places, football is a sport. In Alabama, it's a fine art. New Life Art is now accepting pre-orders for Daniel A. Moore's next Crimson Classic, the Crispy Screen, guys. What a name to commemorate the Fat Boys. This masterwork commemorates the screen pass to Caden Proctor that outsmarted Kirby and the Georgia defense. Proctor's catch and bulldog dozing run set up Ty Simpson's 3-yard touchdown just before the half, which was a big score for us, guys. Visit DanielMooreArt.com to see the artist's preliminary sketch and take advantage of a special pre-publication pricing for the Crispy Screen. Go ahead, get into that. Go get you one of those Caden Proctor prints. I'm super excited to get mine in because he's living a dream of all the Fat Boys. And go look up that Crispy Screen and get you one, guys.